welcome to another episode of the Construction Leading Edge podcast. My name is Todd DeWalt, and my job is to provide you with the tools and resources you need to grow your leadership skills, grow your construction business, and grow your income. In today's episode, I interview Mallorie Brodie, who is one of the founders of a software company called GoBridget.com. They have some interesting software specifically for the construction industry. And I talk a little bit with Mallorie about how she started her business, why she started the business, why she chose the construction industry, and some of the problems that they solve. And she even has some good advice for those of you who run a business or you're thinking about starting a business. There's a lot of applicable insight and information that she gained from starting a software business that I think will help you. So without further ado, this is Mallorie Brodie from GoBridget.com. Enjoy. All right. Well, Mallorie, thanks so much for being on the Construction Leading Edge podcast today. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well, Todd. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's just go ahead and jump in. I have a few questions for you, and interested to find out more about your background, how you got into software development, why you picked the construction industry. And so let's just get going. Tell us, what's your background, and tell us a little bit about your story that led you to develop software for the construction industry.
Yeah, absolutely, Todd. So I actually started the business when I was finishing up my fourth year at what we call here in Canada university, so like college. And I met my business partner, Lauren, who was studying civil engineering, and then I was in the business program. We actually got together through a business accelerator program, so they gave us initial mentorship and funding to get the business off the ground. And Lauren had a lot of experience on site, so she had worked her summers out in the field and had experienced some different communication challenges while she was on site. You know, she was used to using her smartphone and iPad in everyday life, and then she walked on site and was handed a clipboard. So that was sort of the beginning of where our research started. And the initial project that we actually went on was, at the time, the business school at our university was under construction. They were building a new $400 million facility. So we essentially walked on site, asked the team if we could ask them a few questions, and that was really the beginning. So from there, we interviewed over 500 stakeholders in the industry, just about some of the different challenges they face, different frustrations, communication pain points, and it led us to punch list management. So it's a familiar term in the industry. Some call it deficiency management as well. And it was, that last 5% of the project that was just so painful when everyone was ready to move on, and it was just a huge challenge on site to communicate all of the different items to the subcontractors and get the job finished up.
So you interviewed about 500 stakeholders, you said, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So it was subcontractors, site supers, project managers, architects, engineers, everyone you can think of.
So what were some of the common pain points that they shared with you?
So it really came down to communication in general. At the end of the day, you have to walk the job. You have to be on site to identify a lot of the issues that occur. But at the end of the day, it comes back to getting that information passed along to other team members on the project. And, there's so many different stakeholders involved in every project. So if there's a communication breakdown, that's going to take a lot of time to resolve. And especially at the end of the project where there isn't often a lot of time to spare, that was sort of, the last thing the team wanted. So really what we found from all the different stakeholders was they wanted a way to collect better data, so including photos in the documentation is one example of a better way to communicate things. And then another thing was automating some of that communication. So what we found was these teams were going back to their site office at the end of the day with handwritten notes, typing up those notes, which was, taking half an hour here and there, but it really adds up. And that's something that, had it been recorded on an iPad or phone, that a software application could automate. So something that we decided we would integrate into our platform was automatic communication going out to the subcontractors. So once you add it from your iPad or phone, then you don't need to worry about it. It's taken care of for you. So it's just removing a lot of the different steps in that communication process to make sure everything can just get handled faster.
So that's how your software was born. And tell us, what is the name of your software and where can folks find it at?
Yeah, absolutely. So the name of the software is Closeout. The name of our company is Bridget. So the website is GoBridget.com.
And that's BRIDGIT.com?
That's right.
Where did the name of your company come from?
It was actually the first night that Lauren and I met, and we're initially just brainstorming some initial ideas. We had no idea it would stick this long, but everyone loved it. Lauren was actually working on a bridge design project in her engineering coursework at the time, and so I think bridges were on the mind. Another thing was that we obviously knew that we were going to be addressing something in sort of the realm of, handling communication on site, so Bridge It made sense in that respect. And then the last thing was software can definitely be scary sometimes, so anything we could do to sort of humanize the entire experience is something that we wanted our customers to know.
Great. So how long have you been in business?
Since the end of 2012, so a few years now.
Okay. And how's it been going so far?
It's been going really well. When Lauren and I initially pitched the idea to some members of the business community, the first thing they said is, really, mobile technology on the construction site? Like, good luck. And there weren't necessarily a lot of believers, but as soon as Lauren and I actually started our research on site, we got the complete opposite response. So were they currently using mobile technology at most of the sites? No, but they absolutely wanted to. And what we had discovered was there just wasn't a lot out there for them to choose from. It wasn't actually a resistance to mobile technology. So that was one really interesting thing that we discovered very early on that, got us even more excited about the business opportunity.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was you're coming in as an outsider to the construction industry, and I was curious, what has surprised you about the construction industry? There's a lot of prejudice, might be a strong word for it, but there's a lot of preconceptions, let's say, about the construction industry. So what were some of the things that you've been most surprised about in working with clients in the construction industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think their willingness to just try new things was initially the most surprising. So, Lauren had experience on site. I did not. So I was, not that I didn't, believe that there would be people interested. Obviously, I hoped there would be, because that was what we would be pursuing as a business idea. But I just wasn't sure. You're kind of hearing one thing from one group and another thing from another group, and you're not sure at first, but the more research we did, it just became so obvious that the teams on site really just wanted a solution. And, 500 interviews may sound like a lot, but, almost everyone we would call and just say, hey, can we have 5 minutes of your time? We want to learn more about what you do every day and how we can help. The willingness to just talk to us and help us learn was so encouraging early on. And I think, we're still in touch with a lot of those people. And so I think just overall the innovation that everyone wants to bring to the industry is really exciting, and in some ways was a bit surprising to me.
Was it a little intimidating coming into an industry like construction that you didn't have experience with, and there's some preconceived notions? Let's face it, a couple of ladies coming into the construction industry. Was that intimidating at all for you?
It really wasn't, and that's another thing that came up. I'm not sure if it's because so my great-grandfather had a steel company, and my grandfather had a demolition company that he ran, and my dad's in real estate, so I kind of always was hearing about the industry. It seemed very familiar to me, although I hadn't been directly involved in the industry. So I think, really overall, I was just excited about the opportunity. As soon as Lauren and I went on site, I was wearing, my shiny new hard hat and my new steel-toed boots that I tried to throw some mud on before I walked on site the first time. So I was a little bit nervous, but I think that was mostly just because you're sort of just it's like walking into someone's office, right? It wasn't the industry that I was afraid of by any means. And as soon as we did that first interview and I just saw how open everyone was to chat and help us learn more, that any nervousness that I had just completely went away.
Sure. And I think that's a great approach to come in asking two things. Teach me about your industry, and then second, tell me how I can help. It's hard to beat that approach, and most people are not going to be resistant to that.
Yeah.
So kudos for that approach.
Absolutely.
If you don't mind me asking, where did you pick up that approach? Had you seen it done successfully somewhere else, or where did that come from?
I came from a few different places. So in school, when I was studying business, we had a number of business classes, and one of them was called New Venture Creation. And the method that the professor had taught us was to go out, pick a large industry and then narrow in based on doing a number of interviews. There's also a popular book in the startup world called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, and that's another approach that sort of guides you in the direction of just ask questions and then analyze the data in a very methodical way and see what the customers say. So you're not building something and just hoping people will come and buy it from you. You really have to go out there and ask questions and make sure you're building something that people want. So it came from a couple places, and I think it also just seemed like the obvious approach to Lauren and I. We were about to build this business, and it just felt silly almost to just take an idea out of a random brainstorm session and go with it. I think it seemed like the obvious approach that, if we actually expected the industry to buy our product one day, who better to ask than the users? So we really took that seriously in the whole design approach, and it's something that I speak to a lot of young entrepreneurs that are, still in school but hoping to start a business when they graduate. And it's really easy to fall in love with your idea, and it's really easy to just go out there and say, oh, you have this problem, here's how you should solve it, right? And that's definitely not the approach you should take, and it's not the approach we took. So, when we were first starting the research, it started as sort of like a digitized logbook from some of the early interviews, and then it ended up evolving as we interviewed more people and could really see the trends. And I really think that's the way to do it. You have to let your users guide you.
So pick an industry or pick a potential market, go find out what their pain is, understand the pain really well, and then create a product around that pain.
Exactly, yeah, and continue to get the feedback as you're developing the product. So we never stopped. Every day we had a new idea for a feature, and we'd go back to site and say, hey, what do you think? So yeah, it never ends. We're still interviewing our current customers and prospects all the time to make sure that we continue to evolve with them.
Sure. Yeah, that's a little bit I think it's a brilliant approach. It's a little non-traditional. Most people tend to think you need to come up with an idea and then pitch your idea and find the market for your idea. But I agree completely. You need to understand your market's pain and then create a product or a service for that. Let me ask you this. If you were if someone asked you, Mallorie, I want to start my own construction company on the service side, not necessarily software, not necessarily product, but on the service side. I want to be a subcontractor, or I want to provide a service and work in the construction industry. What sort of advice would you give them, sort of taking the same approach you did with your software to come up with a service?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think first encourage them to speak to other stakeholders in the industry and find out where the gap is. So, if you speak to a lot of design firms, do they have trouble finding, a contractor to work with that focuses on, retail size projects or something like that? So I would start to speak with, other companies that are already around and figure out what their gaps are and what their needs are, and then potentially start from there. And then the other thing, once they do kind of find whatever their niche is, I would make sure to encourage them to surround themselves with good people. So that was definitely something that we did early on, just in terms of mentors and advisors and everything from within the industry. And I think that's a really important thing in getting a company off the ground in the industry. So although it's a $900 billion industry in North America, it's a pretty small world, and people talk. So you definitely want some good people on your side.
This is true. It is a small world. It's way too small to burn any bridges, that's for certain. Let me ask you this. What have you learned about business over the past year?
That's a tough one. So I think the biggest thing that actually Lauren and I both have realized is just how important people are. So, we had heard about it at school and everything, that, leading a team can be extremely challenging, but it's also extremely important. And I know Lauren's parents are both entrepreneurs, and it's something that they always talked about when Lauren was growing up. And, it's one of those things you don't really grasp until you're in the position where you have to. And so that's been, huge for us, just learning how to run an effective team, how to make sure that you're employees are happy, how to make sure that they're managing the relationships with your customers properly, how to make sure everyone feels motivated and included. And that's definitely the most challenging thing, but also one of the most rewarding things that we've found.
Do you feel like a college education prepared you for leadership, or were you surprised by what you faced as a business leader?
I think, they give you some skill, like they do give you, a decent skill set. So in terms of like working in a group and that kind of thing, but there's still so much more to learn when you graduate. It's a lot different when there's, money on the table or jobs on the table. School is kind of a good place to practice, I think. But when you get out into the real world, then it's a lot more serious. And so things do change. If you're doing a group project at school, you can't fire someone, for instance, whereas at a company, if someone's not performing, that's what you have to do. Like, that is the right thing to do. And so there's a number of things like that, we didn't think we'd have to face it so early, I guess, upon graduation. There's always tough decisions to make when you're running a business that school can't really prepare you for, but we've tried to learn as fast as possible.
What are some of the leadership issues you've bumped up against that have been a real challenge for you, where you had to scratch your head or go ask for help and you just weren't sure what to do?
I think one thing is definitely just accountability. So that's something that as the company grows, there's new areas that you need to consider that maybe in the early days you didn't have to consider. So Lauren and I, every so often, will sit down and look at the different areas of the business and make sure that one of us is taking charge of those areas. When you don't have someone that's accountable, it's really easy for things to not go perfectly or not go the way you wanted. And so that's something that, early on wasn't as obvious to us, but as we spent more time on the business, it became obvious, okay, every month, every couple months, we need to have a check-in and make sure that all of our bases are covered, because there's constantly new areas that you need to be worrying about that, in the early days of a company just don't matter that much.
Definitely. Have you picked up any leadership tips that you can share with us that you've picked up from working with construction folks? Just kind of the things that folks on a construction site do that you've looked at and thought, that's a good way to handle that. We'll include that in the way we operate. Have you picked up anything like that from construction folks?
I think one thing I've noticed, it's a bit of a different situation, but in our case, it's communication with our investors, and in like comparing that to the construction industry, I think it's often keeping the owner of the project involved. And that's kind of so it's like stakeholder management, I guess. And that's one thing that I've definitely been able to learn a lot from the industry. A lot of the time when we're speaking with different general contractors, for instance, the decisions they're making are to ensure that the project goes well in the eyes of the owner. They want the owner to be happy with the job that they've done. They want to make the communication as clear as possible, and they want to make sure that they have a good experience. So in the future, they would potentially use the same GC again, right? So to get new business from them in the future. And it's the same way with our investors. So we're constantly trying to keep them engaged and excited about our business and excited about the opportunity and communicate with them, so they're happy with our performance, essentially. So that's something that I've talked to a few of our customers about, just because I sort of saw the link, and it's something that you don't learn in school, and you just have to learn through practice. So reaching out to different, more experienced managers is one way that I've sort of been able to learn how to do an even better job at that.
Right on. All right, let's talk about mistakes. I'm assuming you've made at least a mistake in the past couple of years. So
I don't want to talk about
it. All right, let's be transparent for a few minutes at least. What are some mistakes you've learned from in this business? Working either in software development, owning your own company, working with construction clients. What are some of the most educational mistakes? We'll try to put a good spin on these, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lauren and I, neither of us came from the software industry. So we weren't computer science engineers. We didn't come from that technical background. And so that was one of our earliest challenges, and it was something that, we made mistakes along the way for sure. So initially we didn't even know how to speak the language. So in the software world, when you recruit software engineers, you need to sort of present it to them as like, we're solving this big problem. It's going to be really hard to build, but we think you can do it. And the way Lauren and I had been approaching it was, this is a very simple app. It will only take you a weekend to build, which is like not a great way to recruit someone from that background in the early days. So it took us a really long time to find someone. And that meant in the early days, we had to, work with more contract workers and development shops and that type of thing, which is not a way to build a sustainable business. You definitely need to bring it in-house. It got us off the ground. It enabled us to build the initial version of the product, so it was enough to show potential clients, is this what you had in mind? Do you like the design? That type of thing. But that was a huge challenge for us. And so that's something that, if we were to start all over again, I would want to have someone sort of in the earlier days that was on the team that came from that technical background, as opposed to kind of finding makeshift solutions along the way. Now we obviously have a lead software engineer, and that's great, but it took us a while to make that happen. So we had to go through, a full iteration of the product before we could find that person to really lead the engineering side of things.
Gotcha. So some stopgap measures to get things off the ground, and then as quickly as possible bring somebody in-house to provide some more continuity and stability in that position.
Exactly.
Good advice. All right. What's the biggest challenge that you need to solve to get your business to the next level now?
Yeah, so I think we have done a good job at getting a lot of the early customers on board. So, the people in the industry that are, already really interested in technology have been actively looking for solutions to implement on site. And now we're at the point where we're sort of crossing that chasm. So, we need to essentially get out in front of a larger number of folks in the industry. And that's something that's not as easy to do. It changes the way you market the product. You need to make sure that the messaging is clear for everyone and not just those early adopters. And you need to find, an affordable way to do that. Obviously, everyone wishes they had endless advertising and marketing budgets, but unfortunately, it's not the case. So we're kind of constantly experimenting with different ways that we can get in front of a larger audience within the industry. So I think that's sort of our next challenge and to bring us to the next step.
Got it. What advice, we may have covered this a little bit, but I'm always curious, what advice would you give to someone who's contemplating starting a business, whether it's software, general contracting, carpet cleaning, whatever it may be? What's some general advice that you would give to someone who's in that situation?
I think make sure there's a buyer. So I know we already touched on it a little bit, but you need to make sure that there's a customer there that wants what you're offering. And again, I think a lot of people fall in love with their ideas and they don't make sure that there's actually someone out there that wants to pay for it. And at the end of the day, that's what you need in order to run the business. So I think, just going out there, asking questions to your potential users, potential customers, and don't be afraid that if they aren't interested, to tweak the idea or move on to a slightly different idea. That's okay. An idea needs to evolve. But at the end of the day, go out there and talk to the people that are going to use your service.
It seems to me that the most important thing is to focus on the market or the client that you're going to serve, who you're going to add value to, and then the idea will come, because there's always pain and there's always problems in every business that need to be solved. Whereas if you focus on an idea, then you're trying to find ways to shoehorn that idea into people's operations, and sometimes it works, but my experience, most of the time it does not.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you, Todd.
So what is next for Bridget? Do you have any other products that we should be looking forward to? What other problems are you guys looking to solve over the next couple of years? What does the future hold?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually about to release version 2.0 of our product this spring. So it'll be out on the App Store in about a month from now. And so that product's really exciting, I think, for a lot of our customers and for our team, because we've been able to take the feedback from the field in the last year on our 1.0 product and integrate that into the platform. So that's really exciting for us. And the great thing about that is it actually allows companies to use it for more than just deficiency management. So right now we kind of force the user to call the list their punch list or their deficiency list, and we're opening that up so you can call it essentially whatever you want, which means it's applicable for safety walkthroughs, QC walkthroughs, anything on site where you need to snap a picture and assign it to one of your team members. It will work for, and that's something that just came through feedback from our customers. So we initially sold it to them to use for their punch list walkthrough, and then they ended up using it for all these other things. So we just wanted to make that experience a little bit better for them.
Interesting. So commissioning, safety, QA, QC, anything where you need to track information, document it, and communicate it to other team members.
You got it.
Interesting. So we're about out of time. Where should people go if they want to follow you, either on social media or get to your website?
Absolutely. So our Twitter is at gobridget.com. Sorry, just at GoBridget. The website's gobridget.com. At GoBridget, GOBRIDGIT. The website is www.gobridget.com. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's at malbrodie.com. MALBRODIE.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about your experience and your software, Mallory, and best of luck in the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Todd. Have a great day.
Well, that wraps up my interview with Mallorie Brodie. If you'd like to get in touch with her company, you can visit their website at gobridget.com, and that is GOBRIDGIT.com, gobridget.com. They've also been kind enough to give us access to a resource guide that they've put together called Construction Technology Trends for 2015. It's a short paper that they've put together that outlines some of the upcoming technologies that those of us in the construction industry need to be ready for. Some interesting stuff in there about wearables, something they call near field communication, and how they see us moving toward a truly paperless job site. If you want to find out more information and download that PDF, you can go to the show notes for this call, which are at constructionleadingedge.com/027, since this is episode 27. And if you liked this information and you want to stay in touch and get insider access when we have resources available for construction business owners and leaders, I would encourage you to join the Construction Leading Edge Nation. And you can do that on the home page, constructionleadingedge.com. There should be a bright green button there, or you can go to constructionleadingedge.com/nation. I'll send out occasional emails and insider tips and tricks that I think are useful and I think will help you out. So that puts this one in the can. Until next time, my name is Todd DeWalt. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Thanks.